Today we're going to consider the significance of the witches in Macbeth. Firstly, we'll consider their power in the first half of the play. Secondly, we'll consider their relationship with Lady Macbeth. And finally, we'll explore how they lose their power in the end. At the beginning of the play, Shakespeare seems to reflect contemporary fears of witches. One key argument about them, therefore, is that they are presented as outside of the social order and represent a threat to social norms and stability. Their chaotic nature is demonstrated in their initial association with the wild weather of the storm and being termed wild by Banquo, which links them both to the animal world and being outside the structures of society. This wildness and chaos is further supported by their consistent use of paradox, such as in Fair is Foul, implying that they have power to disrupt the world's stability. The fact that the witches speak in trochaic tetrameter catalectic, 4 feet of trochees with 1 beat short, so 7 beats, also places them outside of the order of language within the play. This isolation from social order is further emphasised by the fact we find them in a desert place, perhaps foreshadowing the removal of Macbeth from the accepted social hierarchy. The reading of the witches being outside of the accepted social order is further represented in their association with wild, poisonous animals, such as fenny snake and adder's fork, as well as their association with foreign body parts, for example liver of Jew, nose of Turk and Tartar's lips. Secondly, the witches can be seen to represent an anti-rational world that is a threat to human agency. The fact that they chant in threes could represent their threat to the power of individual thought, key characteristic of ideal Renaissance masculinity. Furthermore, whilst the strength of Banquo's rationality and what was thought of as masculine mental fortitude is represented by his questioning and scepticism towards the witches, Shakespeare demonstrates Macbeth's mental weakness in Banquo's repeated description of him as rapt. Their power to disrupt the rational world is further demonstrated in their effect upon Macbeth. His mind is linked to the witches' poisonous animals by being full of scorpions, whilst later he loses all rationality in declaring the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. We further see their influence on Macbeth in the way his language changes over the play. When he goes to see the witches for the final time, he uses the language of supernatural incantation in I conjure you. He also increasingly speaks in trochees and uses anaphora, e.g. through bladed corn, through castles, through palaces. This threat to rationality contrasts the witches to characters who represent social order and mental stability, such as Banquo, Malcolm and Macduff. The threat to masculine power particularly aligns them to Lady Macbeth, to the extent that some critics have identified her as a fourth witch. An alternative view could be that whilst the witches represent a threat to social order and rationality on a cosmic scale, Lady Macbeth acts as a microcosm for this and represents this threat on a personal scale. Lady Macbeth's call to spirits to unsex her could demonstrate her will to deny her female sexuality and align herself with the androgyny of the witches, who should be women but have beards. Both Lady Macbeth and the witches then usurp the conventions of an early modern good woman in their expressions of violence, lack of compassion, and lack of constraint. However, as the play develops, Shakespeare could be seen to undermine the ability of the witches' supernatural power to control the world. We learn in Act 4 that the witches have masters, but their stormy weather is reduced to mere theatrics in the face of the unnatural storm that threatens the stability of the nation and the whole of society in the wake of Duncan's death. We also never see the witches perform any actual spell on Macbeth. They merely show, lending credence to the argument that their role is merely to enkindle Macbeth's already existing ambition. By the end of the play, Macduff tells Macbeth to despair thy charm and allows Macbeth to realise that the witches have deceived him through equivocation. They are reduced by him to mere juggling fiends, implying they have played with him for sport. An alternative interpretation is that Shakespeare uses the witches to embody the power of equivocal language, of paltering in a double sense. Perhaps Shakespeare was commenting on the fact that the true threat to King James lay not in supernatural deeds, but in the equivocal language used by the perpetrators of the Gunpowder Plot. Yet, ultimately, this recentering of power demonstrates the power not only of a specific group in time, but Shakespeare's own tool, language itself. In summary, the witches first appear to be chaotic, destructive, and dangerous, and we also see this reflected in Lady Macbeth. However, their power is eventually undermined and trumped by both that of Macbeth's ambition and the natural order.